What's up, y'all? This is Revolutionary Fitness Radio, episode 12. Welcome to another episode of Revolutionary Fitness Radio. I'm your host, Sean Garcia, and this is the podcast dedicated to bringing health, fitness, and wellness to the people. Our goal, empowering you all to understand your body, treat it well, and give you the tools to become an agent of change in your community through helping others. Let's move together.
What you know about the running, the stretching, the katas, the weapons, the path, the journey, the jewels, the learning, the fear, the focus, the aches, the pains, the contact sparring, the breaks, the sprains, the trial and error, the ranks and belts, the spiritual growth, the science of breath, the tests, the techniques, the forms, the stances, the flow, the rhythm, the internal answers, the herbs, the healing, the quiet meditation, the truths revealed.
All right, guys, so today we're joined by Diego Quinones from New York City. Very excited to have him on here. Diego's a bike messenger here in New York City. He's going to talk a little bit about that and how he got into it. But we really want Diego to get in here because Diego has a very unique perspective and experience in talking about bike safety and trying to get a grasp on how we can improve bike safety, not only here in New York City, but around the country. Diego, how you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great. Literally just flew in from Puerto Rico. I was there for a week, participating in a bike race and having a good time with my bike family over there.
Yeah, so I mean, it's awesome that you're in Puerto Rico, but it's not awesome that you're back in New York City.
I know.
It's the middle of January right now.
It burns.
Yeah,
it's bad.
It's been one of the worst winters in a while.
Yes, brutal. Well, I can definitely let people know how to ride out there for this kind of weather if they're interested.
We can definitely talk about that. All right, so let's get into it real quick. Let's talk about how you got into, health and fitness and living this fitness lifestyle.
Sure. I mean, since high school, it was, always important for me to want to be fit and healthy. I started working out in high school and throughout college, training with weights, running, and bicycling was sort of a thing that I did just to get around, moving between classes or in my own neighborhood. It really didn't turn into what it became in the last couple of years until I realized that I loved doing it so much and that there was actually work in the city that would pay you to ride a bicycle all day, which was pretty awesome. And for a while, I was looking for jobs while I was between, making different career moves, and people suggested, hey, why don't you just do bike messenger work in New York? And I saw some movies and some shows on the lifestyle, and I kind of found it really interesting. So I just jumped right in and started working for a company, and from there it just took off.
Nice. So what was it about riding a bike that kind of, where'd you get the bug? How did you get addicted to it?
The freedom. That's boils down to the feeling of flying in the city, getting to where you want to go, and just adrenaline, when you're riding in traffic and you like moving fast and you're passing cars, that can be pretty exhilarating for people like me.
Nice. So you ride a unique kind of bike, different than what people are used to. Can you talk about what kind of bike you ride and why you made that choice?
Sure. Well, it wasn't always the case, but I got into riding a fixed gear in the last year. I feel like I evolved to the point of being comfortable with a really minimal bike, minimal in the sense of you got one gear, no cables, no levers, no brakes. You control the bike. It's you and your legs. You tell it when to go and you tell it when to slow down. And it just saves a lot of trouble from having to deal with your chain popping out when you're shifting gears, components failing over time. It's easy to maintain. It's easy to ride once you get the gist of it. And it feels more alive than a regular bike. No coasting, you're just always moving, and you're more engaged in the riding. Your awareness is way up. You're paying more attention to what's happening around you because you have to control that bike. Otherwise, it could be a problem if you aren't paying attention on a fixed gear bike in city traffic.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue is an issue if you're not paying attention at all on any kind of bike.
That is absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, I've seen people flip over in Central Park. I've seen people squeeze their front brake too hard and just go right over. And it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, you just gotta have your common sense, and no matter what kind of ride. But I feel like riding on a fixed gear bike is probably the best way to feel connected to your ride.
Well, I mean, I ride fixed, and I know the feeling you're talking about, just connected to, being connected to the movement, being connected to the piece of equipment, the tool that you're using, and, really feeling like you're one united whole. But I know whenever I talk to anyone about fixed gear and no brakes and all that kind of stuff, they just, their eyes widen open and they're like, you're crazy. What do you say to those people?
People are like, where are your brakes? And I tell them, I'm the brake. And it's true. Like you are the brake and you're also the gas. And, New York City's flat for the most part, with the exception of some areas uptown, parts of the Bronx. But for the most part, you're dealing with a pretty flat city. You don't need, 30 speeds on a bike. You can get away with one and challenge yourself to really push over those inclines and keep up when you're going downhill. Of course, a lot of bikes now come fitted with what they call flip-flop wheels on either side of the back wheel. You can have a free wheel if you like to coast, or if you want to accept the challenge of riding fixed, you can turn it over and have a fixed gear cog. And once you understand how to select the right ratio and what you're looking for, you just talk to somebody who's into riding and they can set you up. And it's just a great feeling. And as far as it being more dangerous, I don't think that it's inherently more dangerous. I actually think fixed gear riders can be safer in the sense of having to be more alert and more, pay more attention and not necessarily rely on mechanical brakes, which do and can fail you like anything else. So, there's no advantage necessarily to having mechanical brakes over riding a fixed gear bike per se. Maybe you might be able to slow down faster, but when you're riding fixed gear, you just learn to slow down ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely New York, not as hilly, but you're coming from Puerto Rico. Was there a lot of hills that you were dealing with?
We rode about 40 miles in this last race, and it was almost all hills. It was intense. I mean, we rode for about 2-3 hours, and by the end of it, I pretty much stripped down to my bike shorts and laid down on the ground, like completely exhausted. Those climbs are pretty aggressive, and you really have to push yourself.
Nice. So for all the fitness geeks who listen to the show, would you say that there's any unique fitness benefits of riding a fixed gear?
Absolutely, because you're fully engaged. You're never not moving at some point because the bike is carrying you. And I call people are used to coasting with a road bike or anything with a free wheel. It's more passive. With the fixed gear, you have a more active recovery period, meaning like you can push, and you can get the bike going. And then you can allow it to carry you. But you're still moving, so there's still activity there. But it's a more active recovery process as far as getting your energy back.
So obviously people have seen movies and heard about or have seen in life messengers riding around the city. You can they're like ninjas. They come flying by you and sliding through small cracks in between, taxi cabs and trucks and all that kind of stuff. So can you describe to us what the life of a messenger is like?
The life of the messenger in New York is really about, picking up packages for clients and getting it to them when they need it and doing it in ways that are, it's a dangerous job. That's like first and foremost, compared to being a policeman or a firefighter, you're constantly surrounded by danger, whereas those professions, danger happens in small instances, but it's very intense. With this one, it's like, there's constantly a threat of injury because you're dealing with taxis, pedestrians, construction on the ground, construction plates, all types of weather, even pigeons. A little crowd of pigeons could just fly out of nowhere when you're passing by and cause you to lose your balance. So it's just being out on the streets, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, really physically demanding. I think most messengers average about maybe 27 to 35 miles of riding a day.
Wow.
So you're really pushing yourself. Your body changes. I mean, you develop muscles that you didn't even realize you were going to develop. You end up taking a lot of salt baths just to recover the body. Some days can be real brutal because the workload is busy and you're moving, between 96th Street to Wall Street 3, 4, 5 times a day, east to west, zigzagging up and down, just seeing every neighborhood, every avenue, every street. Over time, you just know the city like the back of your hand. And what's really unique about it is that for most New Yorkers who ride the train, they see the neighborhood they leave in the morning and maybe the area they work in when they get out the subway, and then the same thing back. With being on a bike, you literally see all of New York every day, all the time, and it's pretty unique. And the city feels a lot smaller when you ride a bike that much.
Mm. Well, I mean, New York City is not a quiet town. Is probably one of the most busiest in the world. So why would anyone in their right mind choose to be a messenger?
Most do it out of I don't want to use the word desperation, but that's where they kind of comes up quickly. You got to be a little crazy to want to do messenger work. I mean, it's you don't graduate high school or college and say I want to be a bike messenger. I mean, that was not my plan. I feel like I got very lucky because it opened my eyes to a type of work that's underappreciated, but very exciting. I do the work because I love it, but I also can provide for myself while doing the work, and it also opened up a lot of doors because aside from just delivering packages for 8-9 hours a day, there's also a very tight community behind the scenes that we share stories and we build camaraderie. We have our beers after work and we talk about what it's like being out there, everything from loading docks to messenger centers and nearly getting door order, pedestrians acting crazy in the streets, so we have a lot to talk about. And then on top of that, a lot of us who like to ride aggressively, there's a few communities of different clubs and communities that organize, competitive street races called Alley Cats. And, there's a lot of fun in that. Just literally ride your bike, crazy for a couple hours and win some prizes and live to talk about it afterwards. So, there's a lot of really interesting people from all walks of life who do messenger work for different reasons. Most of the time it's to pay bills, but you'll meet people who are musicians, who are artists, architects, lawyers, people who've either lost jobs or got sick of jobs and just needed something, they needed a laborer's job to hold them down while they figured out what they were doing. So you meet all types of really interesting people, and, they come, they go, and you do the work, but you try not to let it be the only thing you're doing. So I think a lot of messengers they have other side hustles that they're into as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting because you guys sound like professional athletes with the kind of miles that you're putting in every day. And if you're doing it consistently throughout the week, you're putting in as much miles as some, pro athletes out there, which is pretty interesting. And then you have this subculture and this camaraderie, which is really unique and which is really cool. So what kind of work do you do exactly?
So 2 days a week, I do messenger work for Dutch Express, formerly known as Street Kings New York City. It's a premium courier service, relatively small compared to some of the larger outfits, but we're very efficient, very fast. And I also work for Postmates, which is a new concept from the West Coast, which is it's based in an app, and basically clients who want maybe like Shake Shack or some restaurant that doesn't deliver to their neighborhood, we can deliver anything you want in under an hour for a fee. And so we have a lot of clients who are either too busy or maybe the weather's not right, and there's a really good there's a lot of good work, good paying work in this new the food service industry is very high in demand right now, and some restaurants just don't deliver or won't deliver to where people need it. So I recently purchased a cargo bike. So when I'm not riding my track bike, I'm pushing a cargo bike which can hold up to 500 pounds. It's called a Bullet, and I'm doing truck work. So I can literally handle cases of wine, high volumes of garment bags or boxes, and just do a smaller amount of work and get paid more for it because the rates are substantially higher.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, we'll put those the links in the show notes because I think not only people who are listening, might be interested in the services, but there might be others out there too who are interested in the occupation. It might be something that they want to investigate, and so it'd be cool to see your example on how you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely look up Dutch Express. You can create an account. We have a web-based system. You can track your orders and see literally where the messenger is moving and when he's going to arrive. So it's really cool. Interactive and really cool. You can watch your messenger bring your stuff to you. So Dutch Express and Postmates, those are some really good services that are out there.
Very nice, very nice. So, as a messenger and as a someone who's always riding around the city, you obviously have probably the best lens on the safety of our streets in New York City, particularly around bike safety. Can you talk about what you see out there?
Sure. Well, it turns out, I was a messenger for, a couple months full time, and I just happened to walk into a building and I bumped into an old organizer from the days when I used to, do community organizing work, which is really my background. And I came across this organization called Transportation Alternatives, and they were hiring for a program called the New York City Bike Ambassadors. And I pretty much had an interview on the spot, and I ended up getting a job doing education and outreach on cycling safety throughout the city. So, we're out there talking to cyclists at some of the major intersections and bridges where they come into work. And we preach the bike gospel of New York, more and better bike lanes in every neighborhood, and really, pushing a grassroots process to get people involved in what we call complete streets. So up until the 90s, most New York City streets were not bike friendly. You had very little bike lanes. And now if you look at, First Avenue, Second Avenue uptown and downtown, parts of Broadway, really all over the city, if you pick up any bike map, you'll see more and more green lines of protected bike lanes, which, there's three types of bike lanes in the city. You have the best are protected, which creates a buffer between the cyclists and parked cars, so you can avoid the trap of an opening door. The next best thing are painted lanes, which is a line in the paint parallel to parked cars. And then the third class are sharrows, which is sort of just a sign on the ground of cyclists and other signage to let drivers know, share the road, and it'll offer cyclists connectivity in all the boroughs. And right now, with the launch of City Bike, it was really important that we do this work as far as making more networks, because without the networks, a program like City Bikes wouldn't really last. So what I see out there is more and more investment from the city government in bike lanes, because they see that the more people are on bikes, the less people are in cars, the healthier it is, the less traffic there's going to be. It's just an all-around win-win. Even small businesses do better when there's bike infrastructure, because cyclists, on average, tend to notice more of their neighborhoods than people who are just passing by in cars. So maybe they'll see a little shop and they'll remind themselves that they want to go back. So in the areas that we've created, bike-friendly businesses or the districts and bike lanes, we see a substantial increase in revenue for small businesses. We see substantial declines in collisions with cyclists, with pedestrians. All around, bike lanes just have a traffic calming effect for everyone, and it creates a more vibrant, inviting street. So people see streetscapes that make them want to come out more. So, in any neighborhood where you have opposition to a bike lane, people don't ride bikes. Well, the logic is if you build it, they will come. If people feel they have a space for a bike, they will very much go out and get a bike and start riding it. And we're seeing that now in my neighborhood in East Harlem, where Councilwoman Melissa Marviverito fought along with her community board leaders to make sure that First Avenue and Second Avenue from 100th Street to 125th Street have full protected bike lanes. And we're seeing a huge increase of ridership, and it's benefiting everyone, from the kids who ride their bikes to the businesses that are located right along those bike lanes.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about the expansion of the bike lanes and the City Bike program. But first, I wanted to, what would you say are the biggest dangers out there? Is it the fact that there's not bike lanes, or what do you think is the biggest issue?
I think the biggest danger is speeding. We have way too many drivers who, treat these streets like highways, and it's very unsettling to be on your bike to be passed by somebody going a ridiculous speed in the city. Bike lanes are great for new cyclists who are hitting the road for the first time, because it creates a sense of comfort, and I think it's a good start. We need more help from the police, from the government, in terms of keeping the bike lanes clear, because what good is a bike lane if a truck or a cab is parked in it, forcing you into oncoming traffic? So right now, I think we're looking at a long-term development or reprogramming of street culture. When you ride a bike, everything is you're more aware of everything from how you walk to how people drive. And I think we're looking at the next 10 years as far as really developing something that will last for decades. I mean, the kids that are growing up now in neighborhoods with protected bike lanes, this is what they're going to know indefinitely, whereas for us, it's fairly new. So, yeah, it's a little clumsy at first, but overall the statistics show that there's a huge decrease in collisions and accidents and fatalities because of bike lanes. Like right now, literally, I'm about to cross Queens Boulevard, which is called the Boulevard of Death, and we have a long-term campaign to put protected bike lanes into the borough to create a safer network. Because people are going to ride their bikes anyway. We just need to make it safer for them.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. So let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll dive in a little deeper into this stuff.
Moment, but that's all that matters to me. How are you? Not going. Well, I'm not doing so good.
I bet you probably couldn't tell. Although you were thinking I'm still not well.
And I don't understand how I'm so understanding. I guess that's all I can be. How are you? I think I can help. But I can't help myself.
Should I be happy if you need my help? I usually just talk to myself.
Oh, can't you see? Oh, can't you see? If I help somebody, baby, there's mercy for me. I charity. You. Don't wanna bother you, baby, but I'm bleeding too. Are you needing me like I'm needing you? Even my shadow leaves me all alone at night. Guess I need to start to take my own advice. Oh, can't you see? Oh, can't you see? Somebody's a liar. Whoever said freedom was free. Charity.
All right, guys. So we're back with Diego. Before we left, Diego was talking a little bit about his life as a messenger here in New York City, and also talking about bike safety and going into some of the intricacies behind that. So before, you were talking about the expansion of the bike lanes here in New York City, and then the creation of the city bike program. Mayor Bloomberg, who he just stepped down, right? Took a lot of credit for the expansion of the bike lanes. Can you talk about if he was involved and what kind of stuff was going on?
Well, Bloomberg, to his credit, was a big supporter of the work that organizations like Transportation Alternatives were pushing for as far as a vision for complete streets and safer neighborhoods. So he appointed a really, powerful and sympathetic chair to the Department of Transportation. Janet Sadiq Khan was one of our allies within, the city's administration to help push for a lot of the bike lanes that we saw created over the last few years. So having people in high places like that definitely helped. And fortunately, as part of Bloomberg's legacy, this is one of the things that we can definitely say helped a lot in terms of changing the way the streets feel in New York.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, also too, New York City just recently launched I guess it's like a year ago, going on a year, City Bike Program, which is a bike share program here in New York City. The City Bike Program has gotten a lot of critiques from progressives around the city because it obviously doesn't expand into a lot of people of color neighborhoods, underdeveloped neighborhoods throughout the city. And also too, there's a lot of hefty fines tied to the city bikes. Can you talk a little bit about the complexities of that program?
Well, so, at the moment, it's actually the largest bike share program in the nation and the most successful in the sense of usership and ridership. I mean, you had pre-registration record breaking, I think it was 40,000 within the first couple of weeks. And for now, in the first 5-year phase, which is still considered experimental, it was designed to be large enough to see if it would work, but small enough to manage. And in the first couple weeks and months, there was a lot of glitches in the software. Hurricane Sandy also played a role in the delay of the launch of the program because the stations were based out in neighborhoods that were severely affected by the flooding, so they had to have a lot of the bikes fixed, a lot of the stations fixed. The process to get the stations put up was very rigorous. It engaged community boards and local levels. But it did not reach every neighborhood. So we do have a zone that is pretty much below 59th Street to the tip of Manhattan and parts of downtown Brooklyn and Williamsburg. And I could understand that, there's a huge criticism for it not reaching far enough. And I think that what needs to happen is people need to use the program where it exists and advocate for it in their neighborhoods so that over the next few years we do see an expansion. So for the moment, as a pilot project, it needed to be in busy areas of Manhattan where it would be, it would catch attention, it would be used, and it would supplement a lot of the gaps in the public transit system where trains or buses may not necessarily reach efficiently. As far as fines are concerned, I mean, if you were to compare renting a bike for a full day versus city bike fines, I think, every bike share program around the country has I think a 20 or 30 minute limit, and it's same as for New York. I think actually if you have the yearly pass, you get a full 45-minute ride. So you get unlimited 45-minute blocks of time you can ride a bike. So it's meant for short rides and to keep bikes constantly in circulation. If you go over the time limit, and of course, everybody has a watch nowadays, and there's a city bike app to help you monitor your use of the bike and where the stations are located so you can avoid any other fines. I think they're about $4 for every additional 15 minutes you go over. So if you were to use a bike, for a full day, it would probably cost you just about as much as if you rented a bike for, any other services in the city that rent bikes. So it's definitely more affordable than riding the train. I mean, people say, oh, well, it's $95 for the year. Well, everybody's shelling out $112 a month for unlimited Metro cards, which sucks. But, I think $100 for a bike that you don't have to take care of, that you can pretty much ride anywhere in the busiest parts of, the city in these early phases of the program. I think that's a really good deal. And it's an entry-level program. So let's, be patient, let it grow. And definitely if you think it should be in your neighborhood, you should be working with your community board and your local elected official and organizing to make it happen. I mean, we had a huge survey on the Transportation Alternatives website in the last couple months and weeks, getting people to give constructive feedback for how the program could be better and what the city could do to make accessibility, wider and deeper to other neighborhoods. So, with time, it'll get there. So I think people who want it need to ask for it and definitely get organized and be ready to welcome bike share stations into their neighborhoods, because in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll definitely see an expansion of the program.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too. I mean, I know also too, residents of public housing actually get a discount on that yearly membership.
Exactly.
So that's pretty cool as well. So we'll definitely put some info up for that. And one of the critiques I hear from people in my neighborhood, because I live in the Lower East Side and there's a lot of them out here, and Lower East Side is a gentrified neighborhood where you really have people of color, low income being pushed to the margins. And in this neighborhood, I mean, one of the biggest critiques is that many people, because I think you need a minimum of like $100 on a debit or credit card or something like that in order to rent out the bike, and a lot of people don't have that. So it cuts off a lot of people's access. So that's definitely something, in terms of constructive criticism that I think needs to be adjusted. But overall, I think what the program is showing and the success of the program is that there is this deep desire for people who live in an urban metropolis to want to commute on a bicycle. It's not something that, is wishful thinking by us bikers, but it's actual reality that people want to bike places. People enjoy bicycling. And if the option is there, like you were saying, people will take advantage of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is really cool. So a lot of people who are listening to this show, they're, a lot of people are scared of riding on the streets in New York City. And so now they're listening to this show and they're hearing about you being a messenger and about all these crazy things. Do you have any tips for people on how they could ride a little safer in New York City, or just in general?
Sure. So honestly, the last decade has been a real breakthrough for cyclists in New York. It's been the safest decade for cyclists ever, and we've seen a doubling of ridership in the last 10 years. So it's growing at a huge rate. So I think people need to get confidence in the fact that there are other cyclists out there and there's safety in numbers. So you're not alone. The days of the renegade person on their bike, riding like a maniac through Midtown and, being by themselves, those days are over. It's a new age. Get on your bike, start riding, and start developing that confidence in the street, because more motorists in New York City are used to cyclists, and there's more bike lanes than ever. I mean, the key to really being safe out there is ride like no one sees you. I think some people make the mistake of assuming that, oh, well, I'm on my bike, they should pay attention to me. Unless you make eye contact, unless you're looking, to see the driver, to see that he sees you, pretend they don't see you and ride as carefully as if nobody's paying attention. And, in a sense, you have to compensate for the lack of attention other people might be doing, but if you're not riding aggressively and you're just cautious, you're going to be absolutely fine, because it's gotten safer than it's ever been. And again, there's more connectivity now in most neighborhoods that'll get you places that you couldn't before. I mean, look at First Avenue, cross over the Brooklyn Bridge, ride up, Allen Street, which turns into First Avenue. You can go all the way to the Bronx, on a protected bike lane. And you can do that now, and I wouldn't have been able to say that a year ago. And next year it's going to be even better because there's more expansion, So learn the streets, get yourself a bike map, plan your routes ahead of time. If you have friends that are a little bit more experienced than you in riding, ask them to take you for a ride. It really helps to be with people who know the streets, to kind of like vibe with their confidence, because it really is about confidence, and it's like anything else, you have to develop that. And you have a lot of rights on the road. So Transportation Alternatives puts out little publications called, The Guide to Riding in New York City. We have our, biking rules. These things explain to you in detail your rights as a cyclist, what to do, what your responsibilities are. You're pretty much riding a bike like you're in a car. Technically, so you have to stop at lights. You have to follow the flow of traffic. You're not supposed to salmon. That's what we call it when you're going the wrong way down the street. Things like that. And, there's bike attorneys if you need legal advice, if anything happens. A lot of people don't know this, but like if you're ever in an accident, you can totally get New York State insurance to cover any bills that are associated with that accident, because you're a pedestrian or a cyclist. A driver's insurance can cover medical expenses, bike damage, at no cost to you, as long as you have the information of the driver. Now, if it's a hit and run, then you still have options, because there is a hit and run insurance program provided by the state. If you suffer injuries and you don't have insurance, the state will take care of you. So like, there are so many options. There's so many resources for cyclists. You need to go out there, go to Bike New York, biking rules. These are, pieces of literature and organizations that exist that will give you everything you need to know about riding in New York. And nothing is going to help you better than just getting on two wheels and just going for it. And, right now there's more bike shops than ever. There's tons of people you can ask about how to get started.
Yeah. I mean, I would add too that, well, not add, but just kind of emphasize what you were saying about, if you're like a beginner, these protected bike lanes are probably your best options. There's routes going uptown, downtown, crosstown. So those are some of the best options in your early, days riding on the bike and getting in the road, getting acquainted with it. But, I think you're on point when you say, ride as if no one can see you, because I feel like the biggest thing is that a lot of people get frustrated when somebody walks in a bike lane or somebody. I mean, we live in New York City. People it's a unique city where people are like racing to get places. It's like
Right.
promoted to cross the street before the light turns. It's promoted to like stand off the curve and get ready to race when the green light starts. So you have all these pedestrians who are, I mean, they're numbers, so they're not really paying attention to little cyclists. So you have to be very mindful of that. And I remember too when these protected bike lanes started coming about in the city, that people didn't know what they were, and they were kind of just standing in them. And you got all these bikers like screaming at them, like, "Get out of the bike lane!"
Yeah,
but now,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you're right. The culture is changing in our city. Like now, where people are more conscious of where they're standing, and they understand that that's a designated for area for bikes.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's going to take some time to get used to. Like Second Avenue, they just redid it. Literally like First and Second Avenue. Second Avenue was last year. First Avenue was this year. You're walking out into a totally different street. People it's going to take time. I see a lot of viejitas like stepping out into the bike lane. So you got to be patient and mindful and understand that this is a long-term change in terms of street culture. And being a pedestrian, being a cyclist, and being a driver, everybody needs to share the road. And that's really the most important thing, that it belongs to everyone. It's public space. I hear people who own cars, and I used to own a car in New York City, which is kind of difficult to do anyway. But, people crying over a couple lost parking spots because the streets have been redesigned. Like, I think in total, East Harlem lost, don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere between maybe like 30 and 40 parking spots per avenue that were lost in readjusting the bike lanes and the pedestrian islands. Consider the benefit of access to having a bike and riding safely, that, a sacrifice of public space to benefit that over somebody's private parking. Like you don't put your furniture in the street, but yet your car is private property, and there's a huge sense of entitlement over where you can park it. So there's a lot of, whining about, bike lanes are horrible because they take away parking spots. Well, I don't feel bad for those people. I feel good for the people who are deciding to get on their bike and ride. That's all that I care about.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, we obviously know that less cars in the city would probably be better off, in terms of
course.
just the traffic congestion and then the pollution factor. You'd probably be better off with people riding more bikes. But for those who are drivers, what are some things you want to say to the drivers out there in terms of how they treat bikers on the road? Like what's some things that they can do to improve the conditions?
Slow down. Speed kills. I mean, the difference between somebody going 20, 30, and 40 miles an hour in a city is life-changing. Like more automobiles kill New Yorkers than anything else combined, more than cigarettes, more than gun violence, more than, you name it. Cars kill more people than anything else. And it's something we don't even think about, which is actually crazy. Speeding in the city is just sort of this invisible, deadly force that we kind of just accept. And I think, for drivers, it's really important to, yield to cyclists. I've been hit, the few times that I've been hit by vehicles has been when cars turn on me when they're not paying attention. They like drive up past me and then they make a turn suddenly. So it's really developing awareness, like there's other moving things in the street now besides buses, trucks, and cars. There's cyclists, and it's only getting more and more. So really just taking the time to check your mirrors. Sometimes when I see cars doing that and I'm close enough, if I'm close enough to tap on your window or tap on your mirror, that means you're not paying attention. So I like to kind of wake them up and remind them, hey, I'm here.
Yeah, definitely. I had a question actually, and maybe in terms of taking up lanes, do bicyclists have the right to take up regular car lanes?
Absolutely. Where there is no bike lane, you have the right to take a full lane, preferably not the middle. I think that's just being rude. But if you can stick to the left side of the road and take a full lane, you're going to be, within your rights of, conduct as far as like riding on the street. You can take a full lane where there's not a bike lane. Where there's obstructions in the bike lane, you're allowed to navigate outside of that. And I do hear a lot of complaints from other cyclists about the unfair policing practices. It's, people sometimes don't ride in bike lanes because there's cars parked in them, or there's people like 8th Avenue between 34th Street and 52nd Street is one of the most difficult places to ride a bike, even though there's a protected bike lane. And that's because the sidewalks are too narrow and it's one of the most overcrowded places in the city. So a lot of cyclists, ride in the street. And when it's that time of the month for police to, fulfill their obligations, the quotas that they say that they're not actually doing quotas, but that's what they are. They target cyclists because they're easy picking, and it's usually they get thrown out because there's a good case to argue that the bike lane might be obstructed. But for the most part, yeah, you can take a full lane, and cars honking behind you, you can just tell them to wait.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think you're right in terms of going back to the whole having confidence and knowing your rights on the road is a big way to boost your confidence and understand how you can control your safety and not be victim and prey on the road to all these, cars who are speeding. And I mean, especially taxi cabs, because you understand the hustle they're on. They're trying to hustle to pick up fares. And
sure.
So,
I would advise any cyclist, especially with dealing with cabs, they're very unpredictable vehicles. They see somebody stick their hand up in the street and they swerve. If you see a cab double park or pull over, ride outside, like ride with traffic. Don't try to squeeze between parked cars and double parked taxis, because there's a really good chance that somebody might be getting out, and you don't want to hit a door. We call it getting doored. It's a very common accident for a lot of cyclists to be hit by opening doors. So, really try to look from the rear view window. The rear window is somebody shifting? Are they looking like they're getting out? But just avoid it altogether. And as a general rule, doors are about 3.5 feet wide. Ride that far away from parked cars in general. You don't want to hug a bike lane on the inside ever, because if somebody opens the door, you're pretty much in the bullseye. So really give yourself that extra space. If cars want to be jerks, just stick your hand up and point at them. Be like, no, this is my lane too. You need to go around, and that comes with confidence, and that comes with just over time, being in the streets, that you feel like it's yours too.
Yeah, definitely. I have a couple of scars from being doored a couple of times.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So if people obviously are riding more in the streets, and there's more bikes out there, and there's, more creating that bike culture in the city and around the country, that's awesome, because that's going to increase, awareness and expansion of the protected lanes and all that good stuff. But what's some other things that people probably can start getting involved in to help with expanding bike safety and bike lanes and all that good stuff?
Well, Transportation Alternatives has been around for 40 years. They're the oldest and largest cycling advocacy organization in New York, and I think the country. And we have a very solid model for getting engaged in this discussion with the community and the city at large. So, go to transalt.org and look for your borough committee. There's usually a meeting once a month for the activists where they discuss ongoing campaigns. I think at the moment we have about 14 different campaigns we're working on throughout the city in all the boroughs. So, of course, from the Bronx to Staten Island, Queens, Manhattan, and Brooklyn, there's different corridors that we're looking at. So, big ones that stand out of my mind are like Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, getting protected bike lanes there, Queens Boulevard. Up in the Bronx, we're doing car-free Sundays once again. We're trying to bring that back so people can have space to recreate in their own borough during the summer, free of cars, and, giving people healthy space to, do exercise and have fun. Manhattan, 5th and 6th Avenues, right down the middle of Manhattan. We're looking at protected bike lanes there because those are some of the busiest streets, and people come from all over the world, both tourists, messengers, commuters. Everybody uses those avenues, and there's insufficient bike infrastructure there. So the way we get involved is, we have our field team petitioning on the street. We engage community partners, everything from schools to community organizations to small businesses. We approach the community board, and we try to get resolutions passed, because it starts at the community board level. They request the Department of Transportation to send their engineers to do feasibility studies, which is the next step, and just getting as much support as possible on the ground so that it's an easy yes and it's a safe kind of issue that politicians feel comfortable fighting for. You do all the groundwork, you get everybody on board, or as many people as you can, and within a year or two, you could have a bike lane in your neighborhood where there may not be one, simply by getting involved with the work that we're doing. So definitely go to transalt.org, find out when your activist committee meeting meets once a month, and go to that meeting. Bring a couple friends, and that's the first and the best way to actually see those changes happen in your neighborhood.
Yeah, awesome. So last question before we go. What do you want to say to folks in terms of why they should be riding a bike? Like, why are these? Why is this a good practice, in your opinion?
Oh, there's so many reasons, man. Look, you can save a ton of money if you've got yourself a decent bike to get around by not riding the train all the time. I remember when I first started riding every day, I got on I had a $10 Metro card last me about 3 months. So that's pretty real right there.
For those who don't know, in New
pocket.
York City, a $10 card is 4 swipes. 4
there you
rides.
go. That's how little I rode the train, and that's how good the weather was for a while, so I got away with it. Definitely being prepped for the weather is going to help as far as knowing how to dress. There's always room for improvement there. But so it saves you money. It's honestly faster than you'd think. Like, getting on the train and riding a bike are almost the same speed depending on where within the city you're going, east to west and up and downtown in Manhattan. You're going to be super healthy by riding. You're going to burn a lot of calories if you need to burn calories. You're going to tone your legs. You're going to tone your arms, because it is a full body workout. It's not just your legs. When you're moving and you're getting up and you're standing on your pedals, you're getting, cardio. You're just toning up everything, and you're feeling great. You're feeling like you're flying. And on top of that, it doesn't just need to be a bike ride for pleasure. Like, think about, hey, can I get to work on my bike? Can I get to the grocery store on my bike? Think of it as a vehicle for moving yourself around. And if you get yourself a nice backpack, you can carry a bunch. You can do your grocery shopping all over town. Like, that's what I do. I mean, I use my messenger bag for doing my compra. Like, I'll go to Fairway or wherever, and I'll pick up all my produce and throw it in the bag and just carry it home.
Nice.
So, the benefits are so many. There's just so many reasons to ride, and you get to see so many neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite parts, is just riding and seeing all the scenery, seeing all the different type of people, seeing the sunset, all those things you can't really explain on a podcast, because there's a lot of visual stuff, but it's a great feeling. Really get to know your neighborhood and all that good stuff.
Definitely. A lot of hidden gems in the city you'll only discover on bike.
Yeah, no, for sure. You pass by a shop or you see just a little landmark. You're like, what the hell? I never even knew this was here. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
So, all right, Diego, obviously I want to thank you for coming on and spending some time with us today. But, if people want to get in contact with you and they want to know a little bit more about the work you do, and obviously we'll have some stuff in the show notes, but is there some direct way that people could reach out to you?
Yeah, shoot me an email. I'm always at Diego, Diego, at transalt.org. You can reach me there. Just shoot me an email. Or you can find me on Facebook, Diego Gerena Quinones. That's GerenaQuinones. And if you want to check out my Instagram photos, I do a lot of pictures on bike and of bikes. My Instagram handle is perfectmoment116.
Nice. Cool. And we'll get that in the show notes too, so people can reach out to Diego. All right, brother. Thank you so much, man, for coming on. We really appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that you said in there. I think it's going to make people feel a little bit more confident about getting on the road and riding bikes. And, in 5-10 years, we can make this a bike city.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been really great, and I hope people feel inspired to get on their bikes. Now more than ever, it's a great time to do it. The city's changing, so if you don't have a bike yet, go out and get one and start riding. I'll see you on the streets.
We'll see you on the streets, brother.
All right. Now dig this, baby. You don't care for me. I don't care about that. You got a new groove. I like to
stand next to your fire.